All right, everybody, welcome back. This episode is Fire with Jimmy Rex. Let me give you context. Like, traveled to 106 countries, ran with the Bulls, one of the most successful connected people, and went to breakfast this morning and left a $20,000 tip for the waitress. That's who's on the show, and it is insanely deep, powerful, to the point, short, and it is like tattooed wisdom over and over to the point where I'm making this intro a little longer on purpose. And I'm telling you that this podcast is the reason I opened the Alliance. And so trust me, as soon as you're done listening to this or right now, just DM us RBAA, Relationship Speed Algorithms Alliance, on Instagram. This is why the Alliance exists. Plus, we have the models for the clarity and the support system and the place for you to get your habits and the community and the support and the authenticity. It's all included. So trust me, this one is loaded. I love you. I love this episode. Let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. If you are watching this, it looks a little different, but I still have a lighthouse. It just happens to be Legos that took me and Branson quite a few hours to do. And if you're listening to this, I'm in my home office, but enough of that because we're going to get to dessert first. But before I intro today's guest, I'll just kind of tell you a quick little story and experience, and I'll make it really, really short because I got the absolute pleasure of meeting today's guest when I was in Salt Lake City with some mutual friends. And I was blessed to come into the inner circle, and my experience was nothing but incredible. Just impressed at every single level, every word, connected, empathetic, aware, listening. And I was just like, I'm in. And then I became a massive fan and just started paying attention. And his stories, the things that he's accomplished, but more importantly for me, the wisdom that he has is something that always lands true every time I hear him speak, every time I share. And even every time I meet somebody from his bucket, from his circle, from the work that he does, the experience is the same from them to me too. And I think it just speaks to the quality of the man, his heart, and everything. And so today I'd like to, without further ado, welcome our guest, Jimmy Rex. And I would never, ever remember all of the accolades, but things of like background in real estate in 20 years, top of the market, traveled to 106 companies, leader of men in ways that I can't imagine, experiences, countries, like one of the most Renaissance men that I've ever met. And so, Jimmy, I'm honored to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here, man. Yeah, I was honored to be able to do it. So
yeah, me too. I'm glad it all worked. So I briefed you before the show, and everybody on the show knows we kind of start with dessert first. And I think we were talking before the show, it's a topic that I think is relevant to everybody, and we'll speak about it in the lens of men's, but I feel like in the current state of the world, it's there too. So like, what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing when it comes to men or the challenges they're facing right now, which obviously still apply to entrepreneurs and females as well, but just kind of what we were talking about before.
Yeah, one of the exercises I do with my coaching program, with one of the first weekends that we get together, is I play this game or this exercise called Step in the Circle. And basically I have all 50 guys get in a circle and I read a list of, 45 different questions. And if it applies to you, then you're supposed to take 2 steps into the circle. And the whole point of it is to see that you're not alone, that you're not the only one dealing with this issue or these problems. And it helps get rid of the shame that we carry, thinking that, oh gosh, if anybody knew this thing about me, then they wouldn't love me. Because the truth is the more that we lean into our vulnerability, the more we expose of kind of who we are, what we're about, the more likable we actually are, the more easily we're able to be loved. And so one of the things one of the needs that I saw, and there's a reason why I started my coaching program, was I kept having so many people reaching out to me and saying, dude, where do you meet a group of friends like you have? Like I that doesn't exist where I'm at. And I kind of always took for granted that I had a lot of close friends. And what I realized was there were some very specific things we were doing to connect and go deep with our friendships and stuff. But, I think they say 55% of grown men don't have a group of friends that they're close with. And 28% don't have a single best friend. And so loneliness is definitely one, right? Like we live in a world where we're more connected than ever, but more lonely than ever. And that is a problem. And a lot of people, I got a text from one of my best buddies' wives just yesterday, and she sent it to 3 of us. And she said, hey, so-and-so could really use a little bit of a boost. He's been really down about some things. I think he needs some of his guide time. And, the fact that she knows to hit us up, that we'll provide that, be able to do that. We are able to connect, and we're going to go to dinner and all these different things. But so I think loneliness is a big one. And then just also, I had opportunity to have an experience with my dad earlier this year where we spent 7 or 8 hours together one night, and we were able to go deep about his feelings and some of the things going on in his life, and stuff that he had never shared with anybody before. And I even asked him, I said, Dad, when was the last time you shared any of this? He said, I've never shared any of this with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's just never been safe. And so like my whole childhood, right? Like my dad did so many things right. But that other 5% could be a real bitch, and it was like, those are the things that, he just had shame and guilt and was never able to talk about his feelings and express it, just suppress it down, and ends up springing out in weird, kinky ways. And so unfortunately, that's what happens with a lot of men is they just don't feel like they can really be themselves. They don't feel like they can talk about what's going on, or they think that people won't love them.
Yeah, that definitely lands and rings true. And that exercise that you're talking about, I was at to Five Ventures with Steve Sims when we were doing the speaking to entrepreneurs and training in the prisons, and we did that exercise. And it was one of the most life-changing things that I've ever done. And I've been in personal development work because I realized the only difference between me and them was circumstance. And it was sobering to be on the other side of that. And it was very, very crazy. But I a lot of that lands for me. And it lands for me too, because like a lot of my clients that are females have a lot of the similar things that come on, but I feel like they connect a little bit more. But when people are feeling that way, like I know I've felt incredibly isolated as an entrepreneur, but I also remember specifically with my past and my history, like I wanted to connect, but I genuinely didn't know how. And then the ways in which I would were behaviorally, but they weren't really connecting. They were more so like distracting. So like when you're feeling that way, like what's kind of like the first step or things that people can do or think about, men, women alike, to start working through that?
Yeah, I mean, there is strategy to it. And one of the things I also recognize with my father and some other people is that there's just skills that a lot of people don't have, connecting skills, communication skills. And so, I mean, number one is you just decide, right? You take a moral stand. You say, I'm going to decide to be a different way. And then 2, you got to start changing your behaviors. 3 is to get accountability. Those you get people that are around you that will hold you accountable. And then 4th is you get a support group. And then the 5th is you find a mentor, find who is where I want to be that used to be where I currently am. And you go and you find ways to provide value for that person, to get around that person or those people. And then you can start to see what that looks like. You have to learn from people that have gone before. And thankfully we live in a world today. And that's why, I just wrote a new book. It's called Be One. It comes from the Marcus Aurelius quote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. And the subtitle is How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. And we really go through all this. We talk about how you can break this and how you can connect on a deeper level, how you can go deeper with your friendships and really be able to, as a man, show up your very best for your family, friends, community, et cetera. And so, but there's, those are the things you want to do. You have to be able to go through those 5 steps that I just shared. And that's really the chemistry of transformation.
Can you share them again one more time, just so I can repeat them for everybody?
Yeah. So number 1 is you have to take a moral stand. You have to make a decision that you want to be better, right?
Yep.
Number 2 is you change your behaviors. Number 3 is you get an accountability group or person or whatever, some kind of accountability. 4 is you get some support. That's a brotherhood, that's a community, whatever that might look like. And then 5 is you find a mentor, find somebody that is where you used to be, that's now where you want to be.
Yeah, that lands so much. And even the stories I used to tell myself because of the lack of accountability, or I was in the wrong circles, and the circle that I was in was other people with the same story that I was experiencing. And I wondered why we were all in the same place with the same stories and nobody was moving forward. And so I can say that I've learned that one drastically well, and I vouch for it. When does the book come out?
It comes out February 21st. You can buy it on pre-sale now on Amazon.
Amazing. And what's it called again?
Be One.
Be One by Jimmy Rex. So for everybody listening, his name will be in the title as well, but it's Jimmy Rex, GJIMMY, and then RAX. Sorry, my name's spelled with George. And then while we're at it and we're in connection point, Jimmy, what's your Instagram as well, so I can share with everybody now?
Yeah, it's Mr. Jimmy Rex. And, I have our B1 conference that we do in February. I got Ed Milet, Chris Williamson, a bunch of guys speaking at this year.
Yep.
Prince EA. Also have a lot of the, promo stuff I do with my group and with the book. Everything will be on there. So that's the best place to reach out to me.
Yeah. And I would highly recommend it. I am a massive fan. And so just for everybody listening, it's Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram. We'll hit it early in the show too. That way you have it. We're only 9 minutes in. So you got it. We're here. we'll make sure we hit it a few other times as well. And so that actually leads me to, is this your first book, Jimmy? No, don't you have another one?
This is technically my third. I wrote a book about real estate when I was still doing the real estate stuff. And then I wrote a book about 3-4 years ago called You End Up Where You're Heading. And the subtitle was The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. Ooh. And really just talks about taking people, you become the hero of your own story. No one's coming to save you. Like, it's going to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. And kind of takes you through that whole, kind of through stories of myself and people in my life through that hero's journey that we all go through.
Yeah. I appreciate how succinct your answers are. That one you just dropped tattooed my soul, bro. Like, that was like The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, some Atomic Habits stacked in, a little David Goggins mixed into like one fortune cookie that I might save that part for an alarm tone. I love that. So when or how, right? Because you spent 20 years in real estate. Right now, conferences, one of the most connected individuals, like speaking. And I can say this from experience, my genuine experience of you is when I'm with you or when I see you interact, like you are operating in their greater good, right? And so real estate to now, books, author, conference, men, boom. Like, where was that catalytic moment for you? Or like, what was that like? Or was there always this background in personal responsibility? Or like, what was that like?
Yeah, no, I mean, when I got into real estate, I was very lucky. Or blessed, I guess I could say. I found early on, my first 6 months, I sold like 3 houses and I didn't even know if I was going to stay in the business. And then I found who ended up being the top real estate coach in the country, a guy named Mike Ferry, and coached me up. And by the end of that first year, I'd sold 60 houses. This second year, I sold 98 homes with one assistant, and I was just kind of off to the races. But I became obsessed with self-development because this guy talked about it all the time. He was obsessed with it. So he'd give us all these books to read and all these, conferences to go to and teach us all these things. And so then I was like, man, what else is out there? And so I'd go to every conference and seminar and mastermind. And I really became a student of just honestly self-improvement. And in that, I had a lot of friends reaching out like, hey, I need a book recommendation, or, hey, here's what's going on. What do you suggest? And so some people would ask me to coach or whatever, but I never thought I'd go into it. And then about 4.5 years ago in Utah, I sold the most expensive home ever in the state. It was a $32.5 million house. I mean, made, almost 7 figures in a couple hours. And in that, I just kind of felt satiated, man. I was just kind of like, God, I need to do something more. And there was a realtor about that same time, and he'd been killed going to collect a rent check from a fourplex. And in the paper, he had 7 kids. In the paper, every single article was just like, realtor killed, realtor gets shot, all this stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if I died tomorrow and all I was remembered as is a realtor, like, no offense, like, it's a great life, but like, I'd feel sad about that. There's so much more I have to give. And so I launched my podcast. I did the book. I did all these things. And I started looking at what I could do that would have a greater impact. And I honestly just started listening to what people were asking me. I was getting so many messages in my inbox. People asked me the same 2 questions. Number one is, my book was how to, the hidden dangers of living a safe life. It was all about how to get out of that. And people had seen me traveling all over the world. Like you mentioned in my intro, I've been to 106 countries. I've ran with the bulls. I've swam with, tiger sharks in open water. I've done all these crazy things. I've gone undercover, and helped rescue kids. I mean, I've done all sorts of weird, crazy things. And so people would say like the same 2 things. And number one would be, I feel like I'm stuck in life. You look like you're really living. How do I get back to that spot? And then the second one that people would ask me was, you just seem like you have the best group of friends. How do I find a group of friends like you have? And so I just listened to people and I said, God, I mean, who am I to coach other guys and tell them what to do? But I did know that I was really good at helping men connect. And that was kind of my superpower. All my friends had met through me. We really do have the best group. I mean, dude, my group of friends just this morning, George, we went to D's. It's a local restaurant here in Utah. It's like this, like pretty ghetto place, if I'm being honest. And we went in there, 20 of us, each one of us brought $1,000 for the tip. And we left the 4 waitresses that helped us a $20,000 tip for Christmas. That was just this morning. My friends are incredible and they really are great men. And I just learned, I was like, oh, I do know how to do this. And so naturally for me, the shift and the transition became, I started seeing this need, especially with the pandemic. I think the devil divides us and God brings us together. And I just saw that, the community was super divided. Men were more isolated than ever. I talked to some younger guys that just have no clue where to find friends or how to do this. I was like, this will be what I do. And so that's how I launched my program. It really is above everything else. It's a community based thing. Like I did 4 Christmas parties the last 4 nights because each one of the guys in our group is part of a different group. We keep them small enough that people can connect and really go deep. Yet because there's so much, desire for it, we have 5 groups now. And so anyway, I've just been, above all else, just a community builder. I took, 70 guys to go run with the bulls in Spain. I'm taking 30 guys to Africa in a couple of months. I'm taking 40 couples on a cruise to the Caribbean here in 2 weeks. And so we do a lot of this crazy stuff. And it's just such a beautiful way to do life. I get text after text from all these guys and how it's changing their lives and how they're getting these friendships. They never even knew what a friend was until then. And so that's kind of where this kind of happened naturally, but it was very intentional at the same time. I knew I wanted to do something, and it took me 2 years to come up with what it was going to be, working on it all the time, but it developed into what this thing is now, which has really been really beautiful for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful to witness, and it's really interesting hearing the, under the hood and then seeing the fabric on the outside as well, and having the experience of both, because I can see it. And you said something in my intuition, just wanted to ask, because you really are like a connector and all about community. And you get this, you got to invest in yourself, and you got to decide. But now with that, like, what would you say really is like some of the real big important principles or laws, or quote unquote, lack of better term, secrets for building community or having community? Because it can be applied to many lenses, whether it's your social media, which yours is incredible. It feels like it's us, to dinners, to going out, creating these experiences. But like, what would you say are some of the important pillars for community?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first thing is you got to show up, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to just decide that you're going to be a part of that. And I think one of the big things about community that a lot of people miss is you have to protect your community. So you actually have to be pretty exclusive of who you let in. There's a standard to be a part of my friendships. Like there's a standard to be part of this community. If you're not going to hit it, you're out, because what happens, I used to throw these big houseboat trips every year, and I'd have 40 to 100 people come, single people, and we'd throw these big houseboat trips. And if you have one bad egg there, he causes you 80% of the freaking drama, right?
Yep.
Or she. And so like every year it was funny because in Utah, everyone's very inclusive. And I was kind of the first one that was like, no, you can't come. And I would start telling people no. And a lot of people disliked me for that. But everybody also would say, oh, Jimmy has the best events. Like everybody just feels like family when we're there. Is because there was a standard of how you had to show up to be there. And it was my job to protect it. And so I always say, like, you can't change anybody. You really can't. All you can do is create a container that's safe enough that people are inspired to change themselves. And so my entire job is just to help these men connect on a level and be vulnerable. Honestly, so the 3 pillars of my program are vulnerable, authentic, and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get that, so what happens, George, with guys in general, everybody has stuff about them that's not so pretty, right? We all have that part of us, whether it's you've cheated on your spouse, or porn, or you lied in some business deals, or whatever it was. Everybody has something that they hold a little bit of shame over, right? And we think to ourselves, man, if anybody ever knew this about me, they wouldn't love me. And so we keep it to ourselves, and we just continue to let that shame go through us. And we can't even accept the love we get, because I had one guy in my group, he was exposed to porn at 10 years old, and he'd looked at it every day since. He'd never told his wife, never told his family, never told his parents. And he pulled me aside at our first event. We basically create this container by, I share my story and get vulnerable. Then I have a couple other friends of mine do the same. By the time we're done, everyone's like, man, I want to talk about mine. And this guy he pulled me aside. He said, dude, I've looked at porn every day of my life. I've never told a soul. He said, Jimmy, I've never been able to be celebrated one time in my life, because every time that all I was thinking is, if they knew who I was, they wouldn't love me. And he went home and told his wife, and he's actually been completely clean ever since. But when it's not this shameful thing that you can't talk about, and you obsess over it because you're always thinking not to do it, or thinking about all those things. And so what we do is help people come into integrity. And then from that, give them the support that they need to be able to know that they're still loved. And when you see somebody in that state, when you see somebody in their not so pretty past or whatever else, and you love them in that time, I mean, there's no limit to the amount of love that they'll give to a group or a community. And so like some of my best friends, I have one buddy, he came one night we're all hanging out and he just said, dude, he said, I've never talked about this, but I was sexually abused as a kid. And he's going into it and this whole thing, and he's crying, and we're just freaking loving him, and be like, dude, like, we love you even more now. And all of a sudden he's just like, wow, this is what it feels like to have people that love me and support me. And thankfully, it's getting more and more, I don't want to say popular or mainstream, but like it's being more acceptable to be a little bit more vulnerable. You get guys like Lewis Howes and Bedros Keuilian have talked about being sexually molested, Matthew McConaughey, and some of these other things that people have, because people just think this dark passenger has to ride with them forever. And the truth is it's the opposite. Is when you start to open up about your depression and about not being okay, those things really make a difference. And so I think that's the thing that I could say to anybody if you're trying to build community is, being first the one that opens up first so that other people feel safe to open up, and then honoring that space. There can't be any judgment in that space. Otherwise the people shut back down. So I think those are the things that we've tried to do with our community.
Yeah, bro, you hit so many things. My whole podcast, we talk about mine because I was sexually abused and assaulted when I was a kid by women, and everything that you talk about, even with your friend, a few things like, no matter what modality I went through in my life to get here, whether it was personal development or plant medicine or conferences or things like that, there was always this, without being in integrity, it's like this prison that prevents everything. And like, even when I became a New York Times bestseller, like I've told this story, but they threw me a celebration party and I left because I was like, I was only number 4, not number 1. Right. And it was like this prison that I lived in forever. And I even joke now, like we have our alliance because I missed it. I missed running my masterminds, but I was like, we all put our pants on the same, and it doesn't look like everybody thinks it looks. Like, it's a bad day. We all have bad days. We all have down moments. We all have thoughts. We all have pasts. We all make mistakes, and we have to stop pretending that it's not normal. And we have to realize that we're players in a game, and you fumble, but you got to pick up the ball. You got to tell somebody you fumbled. You got to get some feedback and try to prevent it again. And so I genuinely appreciate your conviction and your clarity and how well you speak about this. And it's just very received and reiterated on this side because I appreciate it. And it's very, very awesome. So now I have a question about you, because now you live this way, you lead this way, which I absolutely love. But for you personally, like, do you have any like sacred, protected, the most important practice part of your day, or something that matters to you more than anything that like you protect, that is the most important thing for you that you've learned over the years?
No, nothing like that. I mean, I've learned that like the more rules we have in place, the more like things we have to do, right?
Yeah.
Like it causes a lot of pain and problems in our life. And so I'm pretty spontaneous, but there's one thing that, I mean, you'll never hear me complain or be a victim. If I am, I catch myself very quickly, right? I try to live in gratitude.
Yeah.
I just have good habits. I mean, I wake up on time. I go to the gym every day. I know how to eat. And so it's not like I have this big thing. I don't even like to talk about my morning routine, because I do have a morning routine that I do a lot of the time, but it's not how I got successful. It's just what I get to do now. And so I don't even really mention it much, because I don't want younger people thinking that's what they should. I spend 3 hours almost every morning just working on me. Right. One thing that I do that kind of changed my world a little bit is I wanted to be very consistent waking up at 7 a.m. And I used to, just love to stay out late. And so it was very hard to get up at 7 a.m. And it's not even a crazy number, but it's like, that's the reality, is like, that was what I wanted to do. And so what I did is, with my coaching program, I got about 200 guys in the state of Utah that I coach. And so they're able to set up one-on-one walks with me. They just pick a morning, and whatever my next open available morning is, they meet me at my doorstep at 7 a.m. So I got a new guy every day, and we go for a 40-minute walk to start the day. And so every single day I go on a walk at 7 a.m. with one of the guys in my group. And it is a hell of a way to start a day. Right? You're getting outside, you're getting sunshine, you're meeting with a friend, you're getting walking. And so that's been a huge part of my routine. But it's not like sacred. Like, I didn't do it this morning. The girl I'm dating was in town, and I had to take her to the airport. And then we went and did that breakfast, the $20,000 breakfast and stuff. And so I haven't done it today, and I didn't do it today. And there's no guilt there. I don't have anything that I have to do, but getting to the gym is very important to me, and just doing those little things every day to make me feel better.
Well, you also have clarity on like the outcome and where you're going, right? So protecting the progress. And I'm what you said at the beginning when you started answering that question, I'm so appreciative of you saying the distinction that like you don't talk about it because it's not what got you here. It's just what you get to do now. Because I rant about copying and pasting people's morning routines instead of looking for correlations. Because the only thing that I like have a sacred belief that everybody, because a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this show, is that you have to earn the right to get on the field every day, which means in the morning, whatever that looks like, you have to have some time for you, whether that's a workout, a meditation, a shower, a habit, a ritual. But like you got to put your pads on before you get out there in the field and get attacked. And so I just appreciate that distinction. It's really, really powerful. And
Yeah.
also the distinction on like protecting the outcome and not creating constraint and rules, which by the way, just to tie in earlier, that constraint is typically where a lot more of that guilt comes from that makes us feel like we can't share because we're not doing it right. And look, it looks a certain way. And it's all just evidence that gets in the way of you just being present. And to even summarize what you said, of like, you even use inversion theory a little bit of like, I don't protect this, but I make sure like I always have a gratitude practice. Like I don't allow myself to be a victim. I don't, if I say it, I catch it. I own it, right? Like I say things, I'm like, cancel. I'm just like, what? I'm like, I didn't like what I said. I wanted to reinsert a better, more empowering statement. And so if you're listening to this too, like picking up these subtleties and these notes of like what's important, because it's also a muscle. And like Jimmy said at the beginning, it's like community is important, connection's important. So you feel safe enough to be yourself. But safe enough to be yourself is also owning your story. And that doesn't make you bad and wrong. It means you fumbled and we got to pick up the ball. We put a band-aid on, right? And then we go again. But nobody can force you to get into that field. Like nobody can force you when you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix to change the dialogue that's happening in your brain. Only you can make that choice, which is what Jimmy said at the very beginning. I think is one of the most important ones, is like the conviction of like you making a decision of like, I want something different. I want to do something different, things like that. And so I genuinely just appreciate how articulate and tied together this is. And so, with that, now I'm just innately curious personally too, because like I'm a big book guy, but I'm a like read a book until it is me, not read a book until like I read it. Right. And I love like how you speak and like even your book, referencing like Marcus Aurelius. Like what would you say are like some of the most powerful books that like you've read or you reread that you would go back to that have helped you in getting to where you are?
Yeah, one of the things that I did when I was younger is I loved to read books about successful people and successful companies. So I'd read a lot of biographies,
Uh-huh.
or listen to them because success leaves clues, and I would just see like patterns of how these people became successful. So I read hundreds of books just about successful people or successful companies, everybody from whatever, Benjamin Franklin to Mariano Rivera. Like it doesn't matter. I just wanted to read about people that had been amazing in their life, had had exceptional lives and how they did that. So I think that's one thing, that I did. And then, I think that there's two types of books. There's books that you should read and books that you should listen to, right? Like biographies are great. History books are great to listen to, but then there's books you got to read. That's like, Atomic Habits, Think and
Yeah.
Grow Rich, some of those classic ones. I mean, there is a reason that the same books get mentioned over and over again. I think one of the problems that, we do exist with the younger generation is there's so much noise out there. There's so many things that you can listen to. I mean, even podcasts, a lot of them are just going to just be a waste of time. But like, one nice thing about a podcast, you put it on, you don't really have to worry about it. You don't think about it. But like with books, you really want to dive into like what you're listening to. And so I just try to, if people that I trust, when they recommend a book, I try to read those. But I also stick to the core. Like when I was younger, when I was building my real estate career, when it got really hard in 2006, 7, 8, I had out in my car, my coach wanted us to have mindset break. And so twice a day for 15 minutes, I'd go to my car. I had a box in the back seat and it just was full of articles or books and things like that that were positive. And then I had a couple of books on CD, and I only had about 4 or 5 books. I had Jim Rohn. I had an Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field. I had Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins. And I just listened to those over and over again, man, the same 4. And those principles are so solid. And it just eliminated a lot of the noise, a lot of the confusion. It was all about personal responsibility, hard work, vision for your life, being intentional, all those types of things. And so I kept it pretty simple, and I still do for the most part. I like to listen to different books, but there's a couple every year that, like Atomic Habits and
Yeah.
some of those other ones that are just so good that I reread them. But that's kind of been what I've done to be successful with that.
I love, well, based on the summary of your new book and the distinctions, it sounds like it's going to be a repeated reread for me and many men as well. It's another way the superior man reference to get in with some other pieces like meditations and stoicism and distinctions that I are incredibly excited about. But it even, for everybody maybe new to the podcast, because a lot of you find me randomly. If you don't know who I am, hi, I'm George. You can go watch the channel trailer. But there's an incredible episode as well with another gentleman I love, Garen Jones, who's a dear friend of mine who was on the show as well. And Garen talked about the same concept. But Garen was locked up in a federal prison with a sentence that wasn't going to end. And he picked up a book, and I'll never forget when he said it. He's like, I didn't read it till I knew it. I read it till I was it. And becoming that book is what got him released from prison miraculously, and evidence disappeared. And so I just want to give credence, because Jimmy also said something that I think matters. There's a reason all the same books are referenced. And there's a reason we all have that one fortune cookie we read that we're like, damn it, I wish I believed that 20 years ago and just acted that same way. And it's because, principles matter, and it's not how pretty it looks, right? We don't need millions of personal trainers to tell you to move more, sleep more. We have to do the things that are spoken about, and there's no one else that are coming to do them. And so, I'll say this to what Jimmy said, because he made a point. There's two ways to go about things. And you guys know I'm bullish on this podcast of like, the moment you hear something, pause it and don't come back until it's implemented, because it can be noise or it can be intentional, and you have to intentionally instill those things. And so this is just another reminder. And Jimmy's been saying it for everyone's like, I want to go to 106 countries. I want to run with the bulls. I want to do this. I want to have conferences. I want to do this. You can also hear in how Jimmy answers and speaks like a lot of the same things that we talk about. So I just want to give credit, because like these are powerful reminders for me as well that are so important. And even like the rigidity piece and the protecting the outcome and staying consistent and celebrating every win and not using evidence to beat ourselves up and not feeling bad I didn't go on my walk, but also intentionally starting my day with somebody that holds me accountable in a community and moving forward. And so it's just absolutely, absolutely incredible. I don't know. I'm going to ask you this question, because I'm actually really, really excited, and we're getting near the end of the show anyways. And so there's this question I ask everybody, but I'm going to paint this one a little bit different, Jimmy, because I'm really, really kind of excited. So I ask everybody, I'm like, imagine that everybody listening to the podcast got Men in Blacked, and they forgot everything that you said, but you have like one question to tattoo anything on their soul. I feel like, just even based on like what you shared today and how articulate you were, I'm just going to expand it a little bit. But like, I feel like it's early year. As soon as this podcast drops, it's the beginning of 2024, and we have an entire year ahead. And I would just want to say, like, if you could impart any wisdom, focus, things to think about for anybody when it comes to men, but anybody listening when it comes to life, entrepreneurship, and like how to operate. Like, I just kind of want to like give you a mini TED talk and not ask the question the way I normally do, and be like, the floor is yours, man. Like, bring us home.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that it's not easy, but it is simple. I think you have to be very intentional. You build it by design. You figure out exactly what you want your life to look like. I mean, think of, what would your highest and best self do? Get very real about where you are today, and then just act as if you're that highest and best self as often as possible. And you close that gap till you become that person.
Mm-hmm.
But it's consistency over time. And the chiste, it's a Spanish word, it's kind of like the trick of life is that everything that is like really good for you, there's not an immediate reward, and it is hard in the moment, right? Working out, eating healthy, working, making your calls, all those things. But everything that like feels good in the moment is probably bad for you long term. And so like people just get that confused too much. And so, being consistent and having a vision for what you want, don't give up what you want most for what you want right now. That's what I would say.
Oh God, don't give up what you want most for what you want right now. That is the fortune cookie of 2024 for me right there. Don't give up what you want most for what you want right now. Okay. What was the name of the book again, Jimmy?
Yeah, it's called B1.
B1.
And you can pick it up at Amazon, Target.com.
Yep. So everybody listening, Amazon, Target.com, also on his Instagram, but B1 by Jimmy Rex, his Instagram. Make sure you connect. Make sure you give him a follow. Shoot him a DM. Let him know anything you took away, any gratitude you have. Like, let's operate by by gratitude and be that way. But it's Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram, and I will be adding that to my cart, my friend. Is there an audio version?
There will be, yeah. I'll be doing the Audible here in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be coming out hopefully by March.
Nice. So we get you narrating it too.
Correct.
You doing anything special in that, or are you just doing a read? You're going to add any notes or ad libs?
It's interesting. I actually had to apply to do my own book because I have a publisher. Wiley is doing the book, and so they make you apply. And thankfully, they said I can do it. But there is a chance to do like a bonus section or like a 15-minute interview about part of it that I will be including in the Audible. That's not in the book itself.
Oh, I love that. I love that. More reason to have both. I love it. You had to audition for your own voice for your own book with your publisher. Yeah. I forgot about those days. Well. All right, for everybody listening, we're about to wrap. Jimmy, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for the potent reminders. Thanks for being a man of example and showing everybody and being it, and just deepening my respect and gratitude for you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. And yeah, guys, reach out anytime. Happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, man, of course. And so everybody, Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram, grab his book, shoot him a DM on Instagram. But for everybody, that's where we're going to wrap the show. So remember the most important parts. Relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. But don't let this become shelf help. Grab it, install it, come back, earn the next one. If you're not subscribed on Spotify, make sure you're on Spotify. If you haven't left a review, leave a review. If not, there's no outro because ain't nothing known for you to do except go apply this into your business, and there's no more time to waste. So have a beautiful day, and we'll see you soon.